Yo, I for real heard you got married to a golden retriever human hybrid. Is that true?
Like my grandma used to say, anything goes in the pod.
This is Nothing Gained
Nothing ventured.
with Allison
and Virgil.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know if you know this, but this is a podcast. Isn't that right, Allison?
This is definitely a podcast. It's the podcast you need in these trying times.
Allison, what day is it?
Fuck if I know. Everything is a blur. Everything just I don't even know what time is anymore.
I mean, March seemed like it lasted for 3 years. April is finally here. April Fools obviously didn't get canceled because this whole thing is a fucking joke as is.
This is a real fucking joke. Can I tell you a sad story?
Tell me a sad story, Allison.
I been doing a lot of online ordering, like Instacart, Grubhub. And This morning this afternoon, I ordered a veggie sandwich from Subway, and the order got canceled because Subway is closed.
Oh no, what are you going to do without all that yoga mat flavored bread that they have?
I don't even know what kind of world I'm living in when I'm fucking ordering from Subway on Grubhub. Something's off.
Yeah. I mean, I don't even know what to say. It just seems like all of the days are just blending together. I don't even know what day of quarantine this is. I think it's like day 18, day 19, maybe. You know, what post-apocalyptic movies never prepared me for was how boring the apocalypse was going to be. I thought this was going to be exciting.
Yeah, I mean, because in all post-apocalyptic or apocalyptic movies, you always have to like fight off zombies in the grocery store and, you know, set up tents with new friends you've made along the road. You're busy, you know, in a movie. But in reality, all you do in an apocalypse is fucking sit on your couch in your pajamas and take Zoom calls. This is bullshit.
Yeah,
not that Zoom I want to fight off zombies and bashes. I mean, I'm not saying that that's where I'd like this to go, but I mean, it's so not exciting, and it's slow motion.
Zombies would never go to bashes. They just don't have a good stock on meats ever. So they'd probably go to Fry's or Safeway. But I don't think zombies would ever go to bashes.
You know, I've never been in a Fry's.
What?
Yeah, I've lived in Arizona for 5 years. I've never been inside of a Fry's, and I've heard wonderful things about their offerings.
Allison, we literally have a Fry's that's like 3 minutes down the road. How have you never been to Fry's?
I don't know. Like my wife taught me the ways of Arizona, and she, you know, in doing that, taught me that Safeway was the better choice if I had to go with a local grocer. And so, yeah, Fry's just kind of fell off my radar. I guess I was sort of prejudiced against it because when I was being groomed to live in Arizona, I never heard anything about it.
You're saying that Sarah was grooming you before you got here?
Yeah, to live in Arizona. I mean, she had to prepare me a little.
I mean,
never get prepared enough, though, to live in Arizona.
Yeah, no kidding. Speaking of Arizona and not being prepared for the shenanigans of this state, did you hear how Doug Ducey was like, look, we need to close down everything except for golf because golf is essential and we need to be out there on those things. That's what it started out as. He was like, look, okay, golf, essential. We need it done. People need to be able to hit a tiny ball with a long steel rod.
Did he change his mind?
I don't know. I imagine so by this point.
You haven't gone to hit up the links lately to see?
No, no, I haven't gone to check and see if the links are open. I mean, when you're as good as Tiger Woods like I am, you just kind of sit back and, you let things go. You know what I mean? I'll get back on the links someday.
I know how much you like to golf. I mean, you're one of those guys where if people can't find you, they're like, he's golfing.
He's out. He's out on the links doing business with his associate.
How is golfing fun? The only thing fun about golfing is the golf cart.
That's exactly what I was saying to some friends the other night on Zoom. Was that it's like the only thing I would ever go to a golf course for is to get drunk and drive around and hopefully wreck a golf cart.
No, I mean, I fucking love riding in and driving golf carts. I've only been able to do it a handful of times in my life. But if you got rid of the golf part of golf courses and it was just carts, I would be there all the fucking time. I'd be so sad right now that they were closed. I'd be behind Ducey 100%. If it was just golf carts on those hills and on that grass, that sounds awesome.
If only there was some sort of activity where you would get in the carts and drive around. It's almost like it's a cart, but it goes places. So
you know what?
I would call it a go vehicle. A go vehicle. And you get in go vehicles and you just drive around a little arena and ram into each other. What? I'm sorry.
At a go-kart facility.
Oh, go-kart. That's a great name for it. Go-kart. All right, cool.
At a go-kart facility, you're just on pavement, going around in circles. It's like being at the, Indy 500, which is also fucking boring. But if you could just ride golf courses are quite beautiful. And if you could just, free ride that, go-karts and bumper cars and shit, there's too many restrictions. So don't tell me what I'm talking about is the same as go-karting.
Oh, gosh. All right. I'm sorry. My apologies. If any go-kart aficionados or owners of go-kart establishments, whatever they're called, are listening to this podcast, which I know you are, if you could turn the pavement into grass, I think that would just make it all better.
And hills, and you got to add ponds. I mean, you gotta be
and like waterfalls and shit.
Waterfalls and shit, yeah. So until go-kart tracks take it up a notch, I don't care. But this episode is sponsored by golf carts.
Golf carts. Do you like the feeling of being out doing something active, but not actually doing anything active? Well, then get a golf cart and drive around.
Yeah, golf carts. So we've done our job for our corporate sponsor this week, golf carts. Since we're talking about the president's favorite pastime, shall we get into the news of the week? And
I think we shall. I'd like to start off by talking about our Lord and Savior, Jared Kushner. Praise be.
Thank God for that man.
He's basically like a blank slate. You just he can take on whatever job you need him to. You just, do you need a coronavirus task force manager? Jared Kushner. Do you need peace in the Middle East? Jared Kushner. Do you need a generic white man to stand at a podium and take a lot of shitty questions? Jared Kushner.
Jared Kushner. He's always a man for the job. In fact, I wish he could teach my classes right now.
Shit. Yeah. What I really wish is that he would get a different haircut. His suits always somehow look 2 sizes too big, and his haircuts look like he's been getting them cut in quarantine his whole life.
He looks like a little kid on school picture day, like he got overly dressed up.
Yeah, his hair's like super shiny because his parents made him wash it the night before.
Yeah. What is he doing involved with any of this?
I have no idea. I don't really even know what he's been doing since the beginning of this administration. Just sort of
Well, that too.
standing there. Just sort
Well,
of
what does
standing
he have
there
to
like
do? The only person I want is Fauci. I don't give a shit what anybody else has to say.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, I like how we have this amazing infectious disease expert, but every time we see a press conference, it's just fucking Donald Trump saying some gibberish for like 30 minutes, and then somebody like Mike Pence or Jared Kushner getting up to blandly re-explain what Trump was trying to insanely explain.
Can you explain to me, when I was driving the other day, again, I don't know what day it is, so I don't know if it was yesterday or if it was Thursday. Well, I do know what day it is. I know today's Friday.
Yesterday was
Thursday.
Yesterday was Thursday.
Shit. Amazing. But I heard the beginning of one of these press conferences, and they were talking at length about some drug bust in the ocean. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Well, not a lot of people know this, but dolphins have a serious cocaine problem. And so they've been trafficking cocaine through the sea via mermaids. And the government caught on, and we've been cracking down on dolphins ever since.
I did not know that. Well, you know, the Russians, what was that, a year ago or so? There was that story about how the Russians trained a dolphin to spy on Americans in Antarctica.
Hey,
so they're fucking
I fall for it.
They're smart. Jared Kushner.
Hey, we should hire a dolphin to do
holy shit,
to do press conference work.
Pushed in a gigantic tank in the middle of one of those press conferences with a dolphin in it to tell me what was going on.
The dolphin just pops out and is like,
There's a translator.
Yeah. It would be who would be the dolphin translator? Who's the closest thing to a dolphin?
Jared Kushner.
Oh my God, I forgot. Jared Kushner. He did. He put on his resume that he studied dolphin linguistics at Harvard University.
I wouldn't be surprised. And also, things are so weird right now. I wouldn't be surprised if there was a dolphin at one of the press briefings. I wouldn't even believe.
How many lies do you think are on Jared Kushner's resume right now?
A lot. I mean,
it probably reads like a fucking Chuck Palahniuk novel or some shit.
I wonder if his resume could be accessed online somewhere. I'm sure.
I mean, it's got to, right?
The best. I mean, I do think it's ridiculous that Kushner's involved with the pandemic task force or whatever we're calling it. But I do think it's even more ridiculous that they initially tasked him to establish peace between Israel and Palestine. I mean, Jimmy Carter couldn't even figure that shit out.
That's because Jimmy Carter was weak.
That's right. He was weak. He had feelings.
God damn it.
Real man.
I remember the story of when Ronald Reagan succeeded Jimmy Carter. The first thing Reagan did was order all of the solar panels to be ripped off the top of the White House, because we weren't gonna do none of that pussy saving the environment shit.
Fuck the environment. The environment's
Fuck the
pussies.
Environment. Yeah.
Like one of our favorite murals downtown.
Yeah. The environment's for a bunch of pajama boy liberals, you fucking cucks. Jesus Christ.
It's so aggressive too.
I know, it was like one of the first things he did from what I remember.
Did he make Nancy do it?
Yeah, he's like, God damn it, Nancy, get up on that roof and take those pussy ass fucking solar panels down.
So
She was like, well, just as long as nobody's doing drugs while I'm up there.
because if she was away for a minute, all hell broke loose with the drug use.
Oh, hell yeah.
Everybody listened to her. What you just said reminded me of a thought that passed through my head the other day when I was feeling kind of down about this whole situation. And that thought was, at least I'm not a teenager stuck at home with my parents. Like, I had this moment where I realized the people who have it possibly the worst right now are kids who are stuck at home with their parents. Do you know why, though?
Why?
Because can you imagine when you were between the ages of 13 and 18, your parents allowing you, while you had like an extensive break because of a pandemic, to just laze about and do as you pleased? Do you know the chores they're constantly being assigned? Do you know the nagging that's probably going on in homes with kids?
And
And
there's
to be a
like,
kid, you have no agency. Like, you can't just be like, fuck it, I'm going to go back to my apartment and do what I want. You're stuck. You're stuck.
you'd have to find like new ways of hiding from them. Like, you're like out in the backyard, like digging a hole. Your parents are like, what are you doing? And you're like, don't worry about it. You'll find out in a couple of days.
Right. And so I, took, and maybe that, our listeners can take comfort at our adult listeners. At least you're not a teenager or adolescent stuck at home with parents telling you what to do at every turn. I mean, like, I can decide not to do the dishes. I can decide to, lay on the couch under a blanket and stare into space. Nobody's harping on me to not do that.
Well, and I mean, vice versa, right? I mean, because I know some 14-year-olds that are pretty much basically fucking sociopaths. So, I mean, I would hate to be. Can you imagine being a chill parent stuck in the house with a psychopathic 14-year-old?
That's true. Yeah,
Like,
I mean, definitely sympathy shout outs to the parents.
Yeah, no kidding. Like, hey, Timmy, would you mind washing your hands more because of the pandemic? And he's like, Jesus fucking Christ, you stupid bitch of a mom. Get the fuck out of my face.
I know, because there is that. And I'm sure teens and adolescents are not being as kind and understanding with their parents as they ought to be during this time. I mean, it sucks for both, which reifies my decision not to have children. Children are wonderful, but like right now during glorious quarantine, I don't want any kids in my house. Not a one.
Glorious, glorious quarantine.
Makes me feel so patriotic.
I heard this story out of Kentucky today, because of course it's in Kentucky, that the the state government there is basically putting people who refuse to stay in their house on house arrest. They're getting them ankle monitors for fucking leaving their house. So now the state government's just like watching everybody and being like, get in your fucking house.
Well, people don't listen. And like, what's it going to take? What's it going to take? I mean, we have almost 300,000 cases in the United States. Almost 7,000 people are dead. And these fuckers are still congregating. I mean,
we lost over 1,000 people yesterday.
Yeah.
Like, and that's what's so insane to me is we're losing so many people. We have no possible chance. Like, we're losing so many people per day. We have no chance to like commemorate them. I just saw this article yesterday of like all the people we've lost in the coronavirus pandemic, and it was just they couldn't even list all the names. I mean, it's insane.
It is. And then nobody comes to your funeral, or you have to have a Zoom funeral or some shit.
funeral.
On Google Hangouts.
They're like,
Tentatively
hold on.
accepted.
Sorry, the connection's kind of bad. We can't even really see into the coffin. Can somebody pick up the laptop and sort of panoramic view it around, please?
The Victorians would have loved that shit. They were all about photographing dead people and making a big deal of the corpses and shit.
Jesus Christ. Oh my God. They're like using the hand raising feature on Zoom, like to do eulogies and stuff. Could you please raise your hand if you would like to speak about this person?
That would be so amazing.
Think about all of the like social events we're gonna have to do on Zoom for the next like 5 months. You want to get married? It's gonna be on fucking Zoom.
It's gonna be on Zoom.
You want a bat mitzvah? Well, guess what? You're having your bat mitzvah. You're becoming a man on Zoom.
On Zoom.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, at this point, yeah, Zoom for everything, every occasion, every conversation. At least Zoom's doing good.
Yeah. I bet the executives of Zoom are fucking like, oh my God, we didn't even know we could make this much money.
This is the best thing that could have ever happened to Zoom. And I'm proud.
I bet Skype is like, what the fuck? How did we drop the ball on this? We've been around for like a decade longer.
Yeah, no, nobody uses Skype for meetings. Not at all. What else have you got for us, Virgil?
Well, Allison.
Anything from BuzzFeed?
You're hilarious, and so is everybody else who fucking yelled at me this week about talking about BuzzFeed too much. You know what? BuzzFeed pays my fucking salary, so get the fuck out of my face. They're a legitimate news source, and none of you can tell me different, and until they stop cutting the check, I am gonna bring them up all the time, okay?
Yeah, I think they're legit. I think every, which flavor soup are you quiz I've taken has been peer reviewed and accurate.
Yeah. I mean, that's why Harvard is usually the ones who publish those quizzes. It's social science research, really. You know what I mean?
Jared Kushner works on those.
Yeah, he is. He's like, I would say I'm potato cream soup.
Yeah. That's what he does in his spare time is he makes BuzzFeed quizzes for BuzzFeed.
This week, also, Bank of America, the generous, benevolent, altruistic organization that they are, said that they're going to be leading the charge in being the first to offer low-interest small business loans during a time when nobody is making money.
Or opening businesses.
Yeah, I bet you they're like, we'll give you a business loan for a one-time payment of $1,200. They're just trying to like collect on all of our government checks.
I'm surprised, I might have said this last week too, that there hasn't been a run on the banks.
What do you mean, like a spree of bank robberies or what?
No, like in the Great Depression when people went nuts because they thought the banks were going to close and go under, which they did. They went to the banks and started taking out all their money and hoarding it.
Oh yeah. I bet we're gonna get a pandemic of soggy, destroyed money because nobody knows how to take care of cash.
I mean, I think it's possible the banks could close. I don't want to start any weird theories, but I mean, I think that's a possibility. But we're so stupid, we're stocking up on toilet paper instead of thinking about our money and our access to our money.
Well, toilet paper is
really,
new money.
Yeah. I'm not really concerned about this, so hopefully, I'm not promoting a conspiracy theory. Deep State wants to take your savings account and your guns.
Deep State.
And shout out to the Deep State, also a sponsor.
This podcast is sponsored by the Deep State. Are you a shadowy person with unknown intentions in our federal government. Deep state. Do illegal shit, just do it quietly.
Fucking deep state.
Deep state.
So not on the topic, and I'm sorry, Virgil, I'm clearing my throat. Virgil was very angry with me last week because I was coughing.
Jesus, she coughs so much.
Yeah, well, I have allergies. I'm not
She
from...
coughs about as much as I mentioned BuzzFeed. By the way, BuzzFeed, what's up?
So can I tell you about a fascinating program I had the pleasure of watching from the Holiday Inn Express, Old Town Scottsdale? Also a sponsor.
Oh, sounds like somebody splurged during the pandemic.
No, you wouldn't believe. Prices on hotels are way the fuck down. Like, I got a suite for, I think it was like $82. So
That's $82 is a cheap price to pay to get coronavirus from a hotel bed sheet.
so this is where... Can I finish?
Yeah, please go ahead.
So the reason I was staying in a hotel is not because I was being socially irresponsible, as Virgil is implying, but because I get some of my cancer treatment down in Scottsdale, because that's where rich people go to get cancer treatment. And though I'm not a rich person, I feel like I deserve rich people cancer treatment. So,
wow, what a revolutionary idea.
Yeah, right? I know. I believe everybody should get rich people treatment of all sorts, but
you fucking socialist.
we live in America.
We are that you know what? That's Bolshevik talk. Okay, I don't want to hear this. Everybody deserves cancer treatment talk. Okay, not on this podcast. This podcast is sponsored by capitalism. Okay,
That's right.
Do you like inequality? Well, then you'll love capitalism, and if you don't love it, it doesn't matter because we still have it.
I love inequality, and I think I've said before to you and maybe on this podcast, I love all the choice that I get in the American healthcare system. It's all about
choices.
So I got the choice to drive almost 3 hours from my home at least once a month to get a shot in my butt. I mean, wow. That's basically that's an amazing choice. Like, do I get a shot in my ass here where I live, or do I travel because there's going to be better ass shots 3 hours away? So I travel 3 hours away. I mean, isn't that amazing that we have that kind of choice?
Hey, that's the type of choice I'm looking for from this establishment.
Yeah. So this is
ass shots for all.
Ass shots for all, 3 hours away from your home, so that during a pandemic you have to stay in the Holiday Inn and probably catch coronavirus. So anyway, my appointments are usually early in the morning, and to spare myself having to drive, roughly 6 hours there and back, I usually stay in a hotel. And I was a little hesitant to do that this month for obvious reasons. But after consulting some of my friends who are in the medical profession, they gave me some tips, and I felt fairly confident that it would be okay. There weren't many people at the Holiday Inn Express Old Town Scottsdale this week. I know that's surprising.
Shocking, yeah.
Anyway, I don't really care to talk about my stay there. It was fine. It was clean. I highly recommend Holiday Inn Old Town Scottsdale for your pandemic hotel needs, because it seemed very clean. And in any case, I came in, and what do you do by yourself in a hotel room during a pandemic?
I mean, yeah, not a whole lot.
I mean, in Scottsdale, it's not like New York City, but there's shit to do in Scottsdale, but not anymore. Everything's shuttered. So, as I've been saying this week, it was like a fucking Cormac McCarthy novel going down to Scottsdale and seeing everything dark and closed, and so nothing to do. So I ended up watching a show on the Weather Channel. I don't know why this was on the Weather Channel, but it was. And apparently it's part of a series called Mayday. Have you heard of this? So the series is called Mayday. Have you ever heard of this?
No, I don't, I don't spend a whole lot of time watching shit on the Weather Channel.
God judge much. Neither do I. I was alone in a fucking Holiday Inn in the middle of a pandemic. What do you want me to do? I gotta watch something.
That'd be like watching an all access channel hosted by Nostradamus.
I'd watch that too. I mean, if I was again in a hotel room, which I will be, I'm sure sometime. So I watched a show on the Weather Channel, with part of a series called Mayday, and it's one of those reenactment shows. You've seen a reenactment show before, I'm sure. Have you ever
I
seen
have.
the History Channel, A&E?
Yeah.
sometimes?
Yeah, I used to watch
Yeah.
like cold case files and stuff.
Yeah, this was kind of like a very poor man's cold case files. And it was about an air disaster that I'd never heard of. And this is why probably I paused to watch the whole thing. I am obsessed with air disasters. I'm terribly afraid of flying, but I like to travel, so I fly. I'm not one of those people that insists on taking the Amtrak when I need to go somewhere. But
For an
but
extra 7 days.
right, for an extra 7 days and an extra $400, you can sleep on this cot on a train. Fuck that. So I do fly, but I'm terrified of it. I just don't trust it. Just it feels wrong to me. So I am, because of that fear, I've read a lot about air disasters. And I know most of them. I know the hits,
All
but there's
classic.
the classics. But there's, I guess, a B-side to air disasters that, I've not been made privy to. And this particular episode of Mayday was about the crash of Atom Air Flight 574. Do you know about this?
No, not at all.
It was an Indonesian airline that had only been in business for about 5 years. So this is 2007 when this happened. And it was like a budget, what's a budget
Like
airline?
JetBlue or
JetBlue or Spirit.
Airlines, where they kick it old school and you just sit on an old milk crate tied to the floor.
I flew Frontier once, and it was like riding a lawn chair in the sky. It was terrible.
They just
But-
for the in-flight snack, they just throw out a bag of oranges, and whoever fights for one, gets one first, just wins.
Seriously, and they're rolling around on the floor. And Frontier is not a sponsor, and honestly, I wouldn't recommend flying Frontier if you can avoid it. Atom Air is no longer in business because of this thing that happened. And what happened was the pilots just got distracted, and they didn't realize the autopilot had gone off, and they were flying directly at a very high speed into this terrible thunderstorm. And this program produced by the Weather Channel is so not it doesn't set the bar high for reenactment series. So they would do things like the plane was flying at 900 miles per hour directly into the eye of the storm, and then it disappeared. And then they'd cut to commercial like, oh, I wonder what happened to it. How did it disappear? I mean, yeah, I get it. Like, it flew into a storm. But my favorite part, sorry, I cleared my throat there, Virgil. I wasn't coughing.
Don't do it again.
I won't do it again. My favorite part was that two of the primary investigators, so I don't need to tell the listeners of our podcast are very sharp and sophisticated. I'm sure you understand that when a plane in 2007 flies directly into the eye of a horrific thunderstorm, the plane, and it's a budget airline, is not going to make it. So basically they nosedived into the ocean. But I could have figured that out in the first 5 minutes of that program. But I stayed to watch because two of the lead investigators were named Franz Wienis and Clint Cruikshank. Those were the names of the two lead investigators who got to the bottom of it. Like, this is why I don't know about this story. Got to the bottom of the most obvious, plane crash.
Sounds like a 5-year-old trying to retell a story about a fucking plane crash. He's like, and so there was an investigator named weenus. And he figured out the plane and that it went into the ocean because there was a hurricane and it spun the plane around and threw it out.
Well, so that's the thing. A 5-year-old could have figured out why this plane crashed. Because it was flying directly into a storm with the autopilot off. Like,
I wonder if because they're a budget airline, they hired a 5-year-old to figure everything out.
No, but what they did do was hired pilots and never trained them on what to do in any kind of emergency.
So if let's say there is a hurricane and I sort of have an inclination to fly into it, because I'm like going against the grain, would you guys recommend that? And they're like, well, I don't know, we don't get that much money, so do whatever you want.
Yeah, try it, see what happens. I mean, I'm not gonna stop you. You're the pilot.
Yeah, you know what's best. All we know is that.
The crazy thing, though, is that the plane at one point banked so far to the right that it was pointing downward toward the sea, and the pilots weren't even aware of this.
They were probably asleep. They're like, you know what? I'm gonna doze off. I'm sure this fucking sardine can that we're taking up into the air is gonna be fine. So I'm gonna take a little nappy poo, and we'll convene at a more convenient time.
At the bottom of the ocean.
Yeah.
When I wake up. Yeah, so I watched that in my Holiday Inn, and learned a little something new. We've talked before in the show.
What did you learn? Don't fly a plane into the eye of a hurricane?
Yeah, I did learn that, if I'm ever, I was gonna say behind the wheel of a plane. Well, what do you call that? What do you call the controlling
the joystick of a plane?
What is that called? The handlebars of a plane?
the upsy downsies of a plane?
Yeah, the upsy downsies. But I did learn that maybe I shouldn't fly the plane directly into the eye of a thunderstorm.
Although I'm sure that airline probably would have hired you anyway. They're like, hey, we heard you have a master's degree in English. You think you could fly this plane?
It's kind of like adjuncting. If you have a master's or an MFA, they'll give you any class.
Yeah, they're like, hey, are you willing to work for way less than you're actually worth?
Can you teach this aviation class?
You're like sitting in class and you're like, and so if I was there, I mean, I probably would have just flown into the eye of the hurricane. That seems the safest bet. And everybody in the class is like, ooh, yeah, okay, all right, writing that down.
Right. It's like hitting a deer. If you doze off and you realize your plane is going right for the eye of a thunderstorm, just hit it. That's like my dad said about deer. Deer runs across in front of your car. Don't try to brake. Just fucking hit it.
Yeah, don't go swerving around, okay? Hurricanes will freeze up in the headlights of a car, so you just kind of gotta run right through it.
In the headlights of a plane.
In the headlights of a plane. Sorry. Do planes have headlights?
I don't think they have. Well, they must, right? Because at night, the pilots have to stay out in front of them. See, this all freaks me out. Like, any form of travel that is this complex, I don't trust it. Like a boat, I get. Like, yeah, that makes sense. I'm fine with a boat. Cars, I get. But planes? Oh my God, and there's no margin for error.
And especially like we were talking about last week, how the whole plane thing started off with two fucking hillbillies named Orville and Wilbur just flying their fucking lawnmower across the Atlantic.
Yeah, I mean, we do talk about this quite a bit. I don't know why this has come up the last few podcasts, this air travel. Maybe we're feeling a little nostalgia because we can't make use of air travel right now.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. Yeah, I'm getting nostalgic about standing in a security line for 2.5 hours.
We're learning new things about this virus every day. Like I read something that said that 27 feet away from people who have it, you can find evidence of the virus. 27
Yeah.
feet away.
Yeah. Yeah, they were saying too that like the virus can live on the bottoms of shoes for like 5 days.
Don't eat your shoes.
Yeah, yeah, that really puts a damper on eating shoes. I mean, that's how I was planning on getting through this whole thing.
Me too. When the food runs out and the toilet paper runs out, we're just going to rely on old shoes.
As long as Governor Cuomo and his brother are on the case,
Oh,
okay, we're gonna
America's
be fine.
smarts.
America's sweethearts.
You know, I like listening to Andrew Cuomo's briefings. I find them much more comforting than the federal briefings. And
Gee,
I
I
also,
can't imagine why.
well, I there's that. But I also kind of appreciate Andrew Cuomo's oldie-timey shtick with delivering the briefings because they're full of these anecdotes and not like Joe Biden anecdotes where he's talking about craziness, but where he's talking
Yeah, he's
about
not up there like Corn Pop is strangling the virus outside as we speak.
no, he's not doing that kind of shit. He's telling these like really cozy, New Yorky, you know, functional Italian home stories, talking about like making meatballs with his mom and shit like that. And I find it refreshing because it's a very old school way to address the public is with these
Yeah.
like cozy family anecdotes.
Yeah.
But then well, I don't know. I mean, what's your take? Do you like Andrew Cuomo or is he too much of a cheeseball for you or
I don't know. I haven't been paying attention to the news very much, not the TV news, I guess. I've been reading like articles here and there. But from what I've seen, one thing I want to know is like, how did both of those children become so successful? One of them's governor of New York, and then the other one is a fucking like top correspondent on a news channel. Like, what are their parents' child rearing?
well, their
Uh,
father was mayor of New York for a long, long
oh,
time.
was he? Oh,
Mario.
okay.
Mm-hmm. And I think a well-liked mayor, and I think he's a mayor that people credit with cleaning up New York.
Like trash wise or corruption wise? Or
Both.
Oh,
Making
right.
Times Square a place that was for families instead of weirdos, I guess. I'm sure it was all done, very thoughtfully and with a lot of care for marginalized people, but
Yeah,
cleaned
I'm
up the
sure.
city.
It was like, hey, you fucking weirdos, get out of Times Square so all the
Pretty
tourists can come down here and destroy it.
Pretty much. I mean, now Times Square, I'm sorry. Times Square is the lamest place on earth. Maybe second only to like, I don't know. It's pretty lame.
No, it's the only place where you can like run into a drunk man cosplaying as Fred Flintstone for no reason.
Right.
Just fucking screaming yabba dabba doo at the top of his lungs for 5 hours.
I've only been to Times Square once briefly. I've only been to New York twice, so I can't really speak at length to it. But of the things I saw in New York, Times Square is not one that was like really moving to me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, but so I don't know a whole lot about, the Cuomos or whatever. I've just thought it's very interesting that this is their moment of shine. You know what I mean? Nobody was talking about them until now, and now they're just sort of bursting out on the scene as these people that are really standing above the rest during the pandemic.
Yeah, it's I wonder, I know a lot of right wingers are saying this, if Andrew Cuomo is trying to kind of prime himself in the American public for a bigger political run. I actually wish he could run for president. I'm sorry, I'm not excited about. And where have Bernie and Biden been? I mean, I know they can't have rallies or whatever, but like, shit, they're MIA. I haven't heard anything from either of them.
I'm pretty sure Joe Biden is being held captive by Corn Pop right now.
I'm pretty sure he's thrown his name around too much. Corn Pop's pissed.
I can't wait for the Ken Burns documentary of this shit with celebrities, the celebrities saying like dramatic shit over images of us on TikTok making fucking vitamin C martinis at 8 o'clock in the morning. And
so let's talk about Ken Burns for a second.
Let's, please.
That man can make just about any historical event riveting. So years ago, he did a piece on the Dust Bowl. And I remember when it came out, I was like, oh, Ken Burns, couldn't you do something more interesting? Like, who the fuck gives a shit about the Dust Bowl? And just the name of that historical event is boring. Dust Bowl.
Yeah, the Dust Bowl. Blah.
Yeah, exactly. But it was fascinating. It was captivating. I couldn't stop watching it. I learned so much about the Dust Bowl. Having said that, I don't think there is a way that he could make this interesting.
Oh, I bet he could. You know he could. He'd be like, in one suburban Midwestern town, young teens were getting lit on health by making vitamin C martinis. Meanwhile, in Florida teens were licking toilet seats. A strange juxtaposition for extraordinary times.
That was pretty good. Maybe you're the next Ken Burns.
Actually, Ken Burns, if you're looking for people to do narrations for any of your future pandemic documentaries, I would be more than willing. So
yeah,
if
that
you're
was
listening.
Really, I was leaning in. I was engaged. It was almost as good as a Dust Bowl.
Yeah. And so there was dust, and it was a bowl. Dust Bowl.
The Dust Bowl was so crazy. Like, fucking dust was so heavy in the air that it blocked out the sun. People were suffocating to death in their houses because they were breathing so much dust.
Jesus.
I didn't know that because the minute my history teachers would ever say Dust Bowl, I'd just turn my brain off. But history teachers never get to focus like Ken Burns does on the human stories. It's always about like the facts and dates and those particulars, but they never tell like the gruesome stories about like when little Jenny suffocated to death walking to school because inhaled so much dust.
She was just drinking dust all day.
And she died. Surprise, surprise.
God damn it, shit.
You should not do that. No matter how bad this all gets, do not drink dust.
Don't drink dust, okay? Your liver can't process it. It'll get you drunk for a little bit, but you know that it's not worth it. Don't drink dust.
Won't quench your thirst. But yeah, you'll trip balls if you drink enough dust. And if that's what you're looking for, I mean, I'm not your mom. I can't tell you not to do it, but
they don't call it angel dust for no reason. You know what I mean?
I would really advise never drinking angel dust.
You wouldn't mix it in some water like Kool-Aid? Drink that down?
I think I can tell this story because it involves the 20 plus year past. Like this was like decades and decades ago. The day of my high school graduation, my friends and I decided to get high. And whatever we had purchased from the neighbor boy was, I don't know if it was angel dust or LSD, but it was laced with some hallucinogen. And so through the commencement ceremony and afterwards at my parents' house with my family and my parents' friends, I was tripping my ass off. Like everything had like outlines on it. The grass, I remember, had like this purple electricity around every blade. It was not a good idea.
Wow. Sounds like
Yeah.
a good idea to me.
I wouldn't suggest it. So for all those teens out there who are sad about not getting to have a proper graduation, even in light of that, don't smoke a joint that has been laced with angel dust. And don't drink angel dust on your
Yeah,
graduation or any day.
you know what that's called? A joint that's dipped in angel dust?
What?
It's called a sherm stick.
A sherm stick. Well, I had part of a sherm stick in
Yeah.
1994.
What a fucking dorky ass name for something that's so hardcore.
A sherm stick. Yeah. That
I-
is.
It almost sounds like a pixie stick, but let me tell you this. They're two different things. I
That
didn't
is
know.
good. Yeah, you need to keep that distinction in mind. If somebody offers you a sherm stick, it's not the same as a pixie stick.
Yeah, just in case you guys were wondering.
Yeah, I mean, we're here to give you that kind of information, street knowledge.
Hey, that's what we got in abundance around here. You know what I'm saying? Street knowledge.
Out on the mean streets of Flagstaff, man, I've learned some
Flagstaff,
things.
Arizona.
People
You
always
ain't never
coming up to me, offering me sherm sticks.
Yeah, you ain't never been to a mountain town like this before.
People in Flagstaff do like to smoke weed.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do. This podcast is brought to you by marijuana.
Why
I'm
not?
I'm surprised we haven't legalized that shit yet.
I think like they should just let us vote that one again during the pandemic. Because if ever the populace needed to chill the fuck out with a little bit of marijuana, now is that time.
Yeah, no kidding. No kidding.
It's easier to stay in your house with marijuana.
Yeah, it is because you're locked down and locked into the couch, you know?
That's right. They'd probably have less problems with social distancing if they let everybody have a little
Hell
marijuana.
yeah. Weed makes you so paranoid and introverted you'll never want to talk to another person ever again.
Yeah, I mean that's the downside. We're not necessarily advocating for use of marijuana during this trying time because it could go one of two ways. I mean, it could be great, get you out of your head for a minute, or it could be horrible because we are in the middle of a global pandemic and you're stoned.
Yeah, you're like, what if my weed has coronavirus on it?
Right? What if they gave me some of that coronavirus kush?
Coronavirus Kush.
I didn't
Hey.
ask for that, but what if
Hey.
you did?
Hey, that shit'll really get you coughing. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, you want to not, if you have a medical marijuana card in the state of Arizona, you want to avoid the strain that is like a indica coronavirus hybrid.
Yeah, COVID Kush.
COVID kush,
You just don't
COVID
need.
cough.
Yeah, it's the only weed where you can't tell whether you're coughing because it's high quality or because it's really, really low quality.
Yeah, and low quality in that it's going to give you a deathly virus.
Well, Allison, we are almost upon the 2:00 hour, and I think it's high time we wrap
Yeah.
this up.
I would have to agree with that. So, again, we've moved away from Love is Blind. We may never move back to Love is Blind. I mean,
We may never move back.
once we left the pod, our feelings changed.
Well, I think also too, we don't know if the pod's safe anymore. It could have corona in it. We've left it. We don't have herd immunity anymore. So, I think we've got to move on.
And until we conclusively know that dogs can't get coronavirus, I think staying away from Barnett is probably a good idea.
I think that's optimal. I think that's optimal. And, so I think we're pretty solidly moving away from Love is Blind. We might pick up Tiger King because people keep talking to me about it. Quit talking to me about that show. I
I
don't want
watched
to
the
hear
first
about it until
two
it's.
episodes, and I mean, it was all right. People say you just got to get through two, and then three gets really crazy. So maybe that's something we could explore. Maybe, if we need a show to kind of bring it all together. But I feel like right now, Virgil, we're providing a kind of community service.
We are. We're we are the Jared Kushners of Flagstaff. We're providing a service for the people of this town, and even though we probably shouldn't be the figureheads of the pandemic in this small mountain town, we are, just like Jared Kushner.
You do what you're called to do. We weren't called to be the Jared Kushners of, or we were called to be the Jared Kushners. We didn't choose it. That's what I'm trying to
We
say.
didn't choose it. It was ordained.
It's our
It was
patriotic.
ordained upon us. Yeah, it's when our country comes a calling, we answer with podcasts.
Every morning when I wake up, I know same is true for you. First thing I think is, what can I do for America today?
And the answer is always more podcast.
More podcasts. America, you have done so much for me, especially in the
Let us
last, 3 to 6 months. So, you know, let us do something for you.
let us do something for you. And with that, Allison, this has been Nothing Gained
Nothing ventured.
with Allison.
And Virgil.
Bye.
Bye.